I love the Advent candles. It's just a way every year to recenter ourselves and remind ourselves what the gospel is all about. That Jesus is our hope, that Jesus is our peace, that Jesus is our joy. And so we light those candles each week, and the last candle we light before Christmas Eve is the candle of love. And the Bible tells us that the greatest of these is love. And I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but the truth is, without love, there is no hope. There's no hope. The fact of the matter is, part of the hope that we all have is somehow to experience the love that we all know we were designed to have. So without love, there is nothing to hope for. Without love, there's no peace. Because ultimately, the peace that we seek, not just an absence of conflict, but the peace that we seek with God, the peace that we seek with each other, is really only found expressed in perfect love. And without love, there is no joy. Love is what gives us the hope that goes beyond our circumstances and the joy that goes beyond our circumstances. And so the greatest of these truly is love. So every week, as we've been lighting these candles, we've been talking about Christmas, we've also been looking at an Old Testament book called Isaiah, which was actually written 700 years before Jesus was born. And the reason we've been looking at this particular book during the Advent season is because this prophet, 700 years before Jesus was born, God was giving Isaiah messages to tell the people of Israel and to tell the world, hope is coming. Hold on. If you're living in a dark world of despair, hold on, because hope is coming. If you're living in a world filled with war and violence, hold on, because peace is coming. If you're living in a world where your circumstances are really tough, hold on. Joy is coming. But ultimately, the message that Isaiah had was, if you're living in a world that is desperate for love, love is coming. And it's not the kind of love that the world tries to sell you. We live in a world today that there's a lot of definitions of love. And quite honestly, most of it is sentimentality, right? I mean, listen, some of you are going to get mad at me for saying this, but Hallmark Christmas movies are full of the sentimental kind of love that we all look at and we think, oh man, it's so warm and fuzzy, but you know that's not how the story ends, right? I mean, we live our whole lives looking for love, as this country music song goes, in all the wrong places, right? Think about this. When a baby is born, the baby immediately is looking for love. We are hardwired to look for love. And so when we're a kid, we look for love in our parents, right? We look for the security and the love and the comfort that can only come from our parents. And unfortunately, we live in a world that's not perfect, and so there are no such thing as perfect parents. And so as we get older, we come to find out, you know what? The kind of love I'm looking for, my parents can't provide it for me. Like they're good, they're great, maybe even the best parent in the world, but they cannot give me the kind of love that my heart is longing for, the thing that I'm made for, my parents can't give me. And so what do? We begin to look for love beyond our family. We start looking for it in romantic relationships, and maybe we even find it in a spouse. And then you realize, well, that's good, it's important, but it's still not quite everything. We try to find it in friends, and then we think, well, maybe what we need to do is we need to have kids. Maybe I need to be on the other end and be the one giving the kind of love to a child. And so then I'm looking for that kind of love in my children or my grandchildren. But here's the problem. Like, no matter how good our family of origin is, no matter how good a family we have, no matter how great a spouse is, it's not complete. It doesn't give us everything we need for the kind of love that we were designed to have. So we keep looking for it. And the world has continued to look for this kind of love. We tried to find it. And so when we figure out that I'm not going to find it in a human being, really, we start looking for a superhero. We start trying to find some larger-than-life person beyond human who can provide us the kind of security, hope, peace, joy that we know can come if we find just the right person who can love us like that. Everything will be fine. I mean, this is hardwired into the human condition, not just today, but it's been hardwired into the human condition that way all along. And it was true in Isaiah's day as well. People were trying to find this kind of security. They were looking for hope They were looking for peace, and their country had been devastated. There had been war and violence. People had been carried off into captivity. The country had been shrinking geographically down to where it was surrounded by enemies all around. And they don't have any hope. They don't have any peace. They don't have any joy. But they're still looking for it. Where is it coming from? Where can we find it? Is God even there? Is God there? Because if you are here today, I'm going to guess you have some belief in God. We may not define him the same way, but we all have this hope that ultimately God is love. That the love that we're looking for comes from God. Well, the children of Israel had the same hope. Can God truly love us in our broken condition? Can he provide us what we need? Can God give us peace? Can he give us joy? Can he give us hope? And so this is what they're looking for. So Isaiah, writing back to these people at this time, is trying to write to them and tell them, just hold on. Because hope is coming, peace is coming, joy is coming. But most importantly, the kind of love that provides all of those things is coming. Because this superhero that you're looking for is not going to be found as a politician or a military leader. They're not going to be found as some economic leader or some person who is an expert in some industry. It's not going to be invented. It's not going to come to you through AI or technology developments or medical advances. It's not going to come that way. This superhero is going to come in the form of a king that you have always longed for but never been able to find. The best ruler among you was never able to provide it. When Isaiah started writing and teaching, there was a king who was ruling at the time named Uzziah. Uzziah had reigned for 50 years. And he was a pretty good king. He had his shortcomings, but he was a pretty good king. But after Uzziah died, the kings after him were not so good. In fact, they were increasingly worse. But people kept looking for the fulfillment, some king who would come, who would ultimately and finally bring about the restoration of the kingdom and the hope that they looked for. And listen, we're not so different than them. We are still looking for somebody who can come and fix it. Somebody whose love is strong enough to fix what is broken. Fix what's broken in our world. Fix what's broken politically. Fix what's broken with the world in terms of the wars that are going on, economic injustice. We're still looking for somebody who can come and do that. Not just somewhere else, but even in our own heart and life. Can there just be a king who would love me enough to fix the brokenness in my heart, to take care of the pain and the hurt that I'm feeling and make everything okay? And so Isaiah, writing to these people, wrote this in Isaiah chapter 11, and it's a message that is just as important for us to hear today. So if you have a Bible, look with me at Isaiah chapter 11, and let's look at what he is saying to the nation of Judah, and still 2,000 years later, in the fulfillment of the birth of Jesus, and then to us today. Here's what it says, Isaiah 11, verse 1. There shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his roots shall bear fruit. Now, if you're not somebody who has read much of the Bible, you read that and you're like, this is why I don't read much of the Bible. What does that even mean? It doesn't even make sense. What's he talking about? Well, you know, if there's a stump, that means there was at once a tree, right? I mean, that's just, that once there was a beautiful tree. And this tree, when Isaiah's writing, is the nation of Israel. And it was supposed to bear fruit. And it was supposed to be a tree that would bring about the healing of all the nations. All the nations could come into its shade and they could eat its fruit. But this tree has been cut down. It's been leveled. It's been removed. All that's left is a stump. And this is the nation of Judah at this point. Just this little stump is all that's left. And what Isaiah is saying is, hey, don't give up hope, because out of that stump is going to come a shoot. This shoot is going to come out. And this message is so important for us, because sometimes in our life, when we go through the hard times of life, the tragedies, the most difficult, hard challenges that you face, sometimes God brings about new life out of the brokenness. Out of the stumps of our life, new life comes. And so God is speaking through Isaiah to the children, to the nation of Judah, and he's saying, just hold on. There's going to be a shoot that's going to come out of that stump, and a branch is going to come, and there's going to be fruit that is going to be born as a result. And so what God promised in Isaiah 11 wasn't the idea that there was going to be just another king, another flawed leader who would make promises that he couldn't fulfill, but there was going to come out of the brokenness and out of the despair, there was going to be a righteous king whose love would have the power to fix everything that was broken in the world. And it wasn't going to be a sentimental love. It was going to be a love that restored, a strong love that rebuilt and renewed everything that sin had broken. So what I want to look at is I want to look at the rest of this passage from Isaiah chapter 11. I want to look at the 9 verses that follow verse 1, and I want to look at 4 specific things. I want to look at the character of this king that we've all been longing for. I want to look specifically at the reign of this king and what the reign of this king looks like. I want to look at the people's response to the king, and finally, the identity of the king. So look with me first at the character of the king. Look what he says in verses 2 and 3 about the character of this king who is to come. And the Spirit of the Lord shall rest upon him. The Spirit of wisdom and understanding, the Spirit of counsel and might, the Spirit of knowledge and the fear of the Lord. There's 3 pairs of things that he says there. We're going to come back to that in just a minute. So the Spirit of the Lord is on this righteous king, and he's got all these character traits. And his delight shall be in the fear of the Lord. He shall not judge what he sees with his eyes or decide disputes upon what he hears, what his ears hear. Now, it's interesting to me, this description of this righteous king, because the truth is, we have all probably lived long enough to see examples of leaders and powerful figures in the world who have made bad decisions based on what they thought was right information. They've judged things based on what their eyes saw and what their ears heard, and then they made a decision, and years later you realize, oh, that wasn't quite right. I can think in recent history of some of the wars our own country's been involved in, and then you find out later that was bad intelligence. And so leaders made decisions based on information, what their eyes saw, what their ears heard, and then you find out, oh, well, maybe it wasn't quite like that. I mean, you go back in history and you see this. I think of some of the terrible things of history. All came about because leaders thought they were doing the right thing. They were trusting their eyes and their ears, but it ended up not being the right thing. I mean, think about the Salem witch trials, or think about slavery and segregation, or think about the Crusades. Great examples throughout human history where leaders thought they were doing the right thing and they made decisions based on what their eyes saw and what their ears heard. And it ended up being wrong. And only time could prove that. There was no way they could have necessarily known that maybe at real time. And here's where this matters for you and for me. Because my guess is, if you were to go back in your life, some of the decisions that if you could undo them, if you could change the decisions, you would look at those situations and at real time, you made decisions based on what you thought you knew to be true because of what your eyes saw and your ears heard. And then now, 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later, you look back and you're like, I was so wrong. I was wrong. I made decisions based on my eyes and my ears, but I was wrong. I did not have all the information. And here's what's true about every human leader, no matter how good they are. We do not know everything, and they do not know everything. We need some other wisdom from some other source to guide us to understand what our eyes can't see and our ears can't hear. This is why the Spirit of the Lord was resting on this righteous king who is to come. The character of this king is one who doesn't make decisions based on just what is obvious by sight and by hearing, but is guided by the Spirit of the Lord. And there are 3 tensions that exemplify the character of this coming king. The first one is wisdom and understanding. This king will have wisdom, meaning not only do they have all the information, head knowledge, but they're able to rightly take that information and make good decisions based on it. So they have wisdom, but they also have understanding. What is understanding? Understanding is having all the information you need, all of the facts you need that may go beyond what you have the information to provide at the time. So this king not only has wisdom, which any human can have, but they have understanding. They know everything that's going on. And so you see this righteous king making good decisions and making decisions based on what they understand. Do you know something about your life that is so liberating if you're going through a hard time right now? Do you know that God understands your life in a way you don't? God sees your circumstances in a way you don't. And part of faith is trusting that God is moving in a way that you don't understand right now. You might have wisdom. You certainly have information. But the understanding that comes from trusting that God knows and sees things that you can't know and see, and when you trust Him, you don't have to just depend on what your eyes see and your ears hear. This righteous king has wisdom and understanding, but this righteous king also has counsel and might. Counsel and might. Think about this. Some of you maybe have had the experience where you go see a counselor and you've sat down. It could be a career counselor, it could be an emotional counselor, could be some other counselor. Maybe you just sought the wisdom of somebody, and so you sat down and you got their counsel from them. Could have been an academic advisor in school, right? And they've got all the information. They give you all this information. They give you wise counsel, but they don't have the power to make you do anything. You just have to listen to them. They offer counsel, but they don't have might to make you do anything, right? Some of you have been in situations where you've experienced somebody who had lots of might and power and authority, but they didn't have any wise counsel. They just charge into situations and make terrible decisions, and they did not take the time to seek wise counsel. This righteous king who is coming has counsel and might. They know the right thing to do, and they have the power to actually do it. Do you know that the God that we worship, the God that we celebrate, is a God who is full of counsel and might? Not only does he know the right thing, he has the power to see the right thing come to fruition in your life and in our world. The third characteristic that we see, the third tension that we see, is the tension between knowledge and fear of the Lord. Knowledge. You know, knowledge, the Bible tells us that knowledge can puff us up and make us proud. Have you ever known the smartest person in the room? If you haven't known the smartest person in the room, my guess is maybe you think you are the smartest person in the room. But the smartest person in the room, but sometimes that person is the smartest person in the room, but they're the least tuned into the fact that their pride keeps their knowledge from being a benefit to anybody else. And then if you have somebody who lives out of constant fear, they don't have the courage to say anything that needs to be said. This righteous king who is coming lives in knowledge and in fear of the Lord. That this righteous king knows what is right, but it lives humbly and respectfully in obedience to God. So this is the character of the king that Isaiah is describing. But now look with me, and this is so interesting, at the reign of this king, what the reign of this king looks like. Look at verse 4 and 5. With righteousness he shall judge the poor and decide with equity for the meek of the earth. And he shall strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. Notice there's not a weapon made of metal or iron or steel. With the rod of his mouth and with the breath of his lips he shall kill the wicked. Righteousness shall be the belt of his waist, and faithfulness the belt of his loins. This description of this king is not one of a military conqueror. This is the description of a king who by the speaking of his word brings about change. It's almost like it's echoing back to what Genesis said. You remember at the beginning in Genesis when God said, "Let there be," and there was? That the spoken word of God caused the sun to be created, and the moon and the stars to spin, and the earth to be formed. This spoken word of this righteous king will bring about justice, will recognize that there is inequity in the world. And so this righteous king advocates for the weakest among us, not just the strong. Our political systems, our military is based on strength. I mean, those people in power, they need other powerful people to maintain their positions. Not this righteous king. This righteous king has power and is an advocate for those who are the least among us. And his reign is defined by rightness, by always doing what is right. This king doesn't have to make compromises in order to get half of what he wants done, but has to accept some bad deals in the process. He will make things just. He will make things right. He will identify with the poor. He'll advocate on their behalf. But he isn't just a social justice warrior, because he's also going to make things right in all of creation. Look what he says next in verse 6 through 8. It's not just about humans. It's about the created order. Look what's next. The wolf shall dwell with the lamb, and the leopard shall lie down with the young goat, and the calf of the lion and the fatted calf together, and a little child shall lead them. The cow and the bear shall graze, their young shall lie down together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox. The nursing child shall play over the hole of the cobra, to which you should think, where is that child's mother? Right? Where is that baby's mother? And the weaned child shall put his hand in the adder's den. So what is going on here? What is this description about? There's a description here that this king isn't just going to bring justice and righteousness and advocate for the poor. This king is going to come and is going to fix everything that's broken in creation. If you go back to the story of Genesis, you see the story of this perfect creation where there was union and harmony between God and humans and all the creation. Everything was right. Man was put to have dominion over the earth, to tend it, to make it fruitful. And there was this beautiful picture in the story of Genesis, and it was destroyed by sin. But what Isaiah is saying is, this king that is coming is going to make it all right again. Everything's going to be restored. There's going to be a reunion. There's going to be a newness to it. But there's also going to be a blessing. This mention of the child and the snake is not an accident. You remember when Eve took from the fruit of the tree and gave it to Adam, and Adam ate it and they sinned, that the tempter was the serpent. The tempter was the one who said to Eve, did God really tell you not to eat from this fruit? You can eat from this fruit. And so Eve did it. And then God spoke a curse over Adam and Eve and the serpent. Said the serpent would crawl on the ground, it'd crawl on its belly all of its days. And that the child of Adam, that there would be a child, and this snake would strike the heel of that child. And that child would crush the snake's head. Until you read that in Genesis and you're like, that's kind of weird. That's kind of strange. But here it is again in Isaiah. What is Isaiah saying? Isaiah is saying, hey, the curse is going to be reversed. Everything that sin brought into the world, the enmity between the snake and the child is going to be resolved, and the child is going to sit and play with the snake. This idea that Satan, this tempter from the beginning, strikes at the heel of the child, and the child ultimately crushes the head of the snake. But see, that's just the end of conflict. What Isaiah is talking about, no, there's something even better coming than that. There's a renewal. There's a restoration. Everything is going to be made right. Everything that is broken is going to be fixed. And it's not just about human sinfulness and sinful systems in the world, but there's something broken in our world. You've seen this. Like you watch a natural disaster happen and you see thousands of people's lives destroyed. And you think, what is going on? What is wrong? Why would God allow this to happen? Or you see the consequences of diseases, and you see pain and suffering, and it's nobody's fault. It's not the result of war. There's just something broken in creation. And we think, how can this be made right? And Isaiah is saying, hold on, there's a king coming. And the king isn't just going to come and fix social injustice. The king is actually going to fix what's wrong in creation itself. This is why Paul said in Romans chapter 8, this is what he wrote. He said, for the creation waits with eager longing for the revealing of the sons of God. For the creation was subjected to futility. See, when sin entered the world, it wasn't just humans who were broken. All creation was broken. Not willingly, but because of him who subjected it, in hope that the creation itself would be set free from its bondage to corruption and obtain the freedom of the glory of the children of God. This is what Isaiah promised. Everything that's broken in the world is going to be made right. There's going to be peace. There's going to be a reunion. There's going to be newness that is going to come about as a result of what this is. There's going to be an end of exile. It's not just exile of the Jewish people in Isaiah's day, but there's going to be an end of exile from us, from the garden, that perfect place that God created. And it seems like we've all been exiled from Eden ever since. That place where there's no more weeping and no more disease and no more natural disasters and no more injustice. And suddenly we see this righteous king who comes to reign welcomes us back to this place. Now, what's the response to the king? Look at verse 9 and 10. They shall not hurt or destroy in all my holy mountain. No more war, no more violence. For the earth shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. As the waters cover the sea. It's kind of almost a ridiculous analogy, isn't it? I mean, think about this. How do the waters cover the sea? There is no difference between the water and the sea. And what Isaiah is saying is the knowledge of God is going to be so pervasive that there's no distinction between creation and the knowledge of God. If you're in creation, you will know the Lord. In that day, the root of Jesse, who shall stand as a signal to the people, of him shall the nations inquire, and his resting place shall be glorious. Meaning that this king is welcoming all the earth. People from all tribes and nations are going to be welcomed back into this perfect creation. It's the end of an exile. It's the beginning of the creation. Everything that was broken, everything that sin destroyed is going to be made new. Now, most importantly of all is the identity of the king. And I want you to look at two verses with me because it's easy to miss. But in verse 1 and verse 10, look with me again back at verse 1. Isaiah chapter 11, verse 1. There shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, and a branch from his root shall bear fruit. So a stump, right? This idea that creation, everything is broken, it's been cut down, it's not bearing fruit. But Isaiah is saying there's going to be a shoot that's going to come out of that stump, a stump of Jesse. Who was Jesse? Jesse was the father of King David. And the promise was the Messiah, this king, was going to come out of the line of David. So this shoot is going to come out of the line of David. But now look with me down at verse 10. In that day, the root of Jesse, who shall stand as a signal for the prophets. Now hold on. I thought you said that it was a shoot from the stump. But now in verse 10, what are you saying? No, it's the root of the stump. All right, well, which is it, Isaiah? Is it the shoot or is it the root? Because here's the thing, a shoot and a root are opposite. Remember, what is a root? A root is the source of the stump, right? A root is the thing that leads to the tree actually existing. It is what sustains the tree, and a root comes before the stump does, but a shoot comes after the stump. It's both. Somehow this righteous king is both. How is that possible? It's possible because God himself, who spoke creation into being, he said it and it was so. This same God, this same word that was in the beginning would take on flesh and come and dwell among us. That God, the creator, the root himself, would come into humanity as a human and would become also the shoot. That Jesus is the fulfillment, the root and the shoot. And so we see in Jesus this one who was born, who was humble. Remember this character of this king? This one who would be humble. He would advocate for the poor. Jesus came in among us. Not only did he advocate for the poor, throughout the Gospels, you see examples of him lifting up the outsider and bringing in the outsider to the inside. You see that throughout the teachings. But he himself identified as somebody who was poor. He wasn't born to kings in a palace. He was born to a refugee couple in a barn. They didn't even have the money to present the proper offering at his dedication. They presented a pauper's offering. This king would have wisdom and knowledge and understanding. He would have counsel and might and humility and fear of the Lord. And he would have all of that, and you see it in his teachings. You get to the end of the Sermon on the Mount, and Jesus gives these teachings that nobody could fully grasp or understand. He gets to the end, and it says all the people who heard him were amazed because he didn't teach like any of their teachers or any of their Pharisees or their Sadducees or the scribes of the law. That Jesus stepped in among us as one of us, but as one who came from God, who was God in flesh, to offer us this peace, this righteous king. That Jesus is the righteous king. And it is the love of Jesus that will set everything right. Not just in creation, but in your life. His love is the fulfillment of the hopes that you have. It's not in the job you're looking for. It's not in the clean bill of health from the doctor. It's fulfilled in the love of Jesus. That's the ultimate hope. He is the one who secures our peace. It is God's love for you through Jesus that has made peace with God. It is God's love through Jesus that offers you peace with other people. And it is Jesus' love that sustains our joy. Jesus is the righteous king. And here's the thing. As he came into the violence and the brokenness of our world, just like he comes into the violence and brokenness of our lives and of our families, everything isn't fixed overnight. There's a shoot that is growing. There's a love that is expanding. And as he continues to do his work, he is making all things new, and he wants to begin that in you, and he wants to begin that in me. Here is why this matters at Christmas time. Because Christmas flies in the face of world religions. Let me just tell you, world religion, all religions basically fall in two camps. Okay? You have a camp that says the God of wrath, and you have a camp that says the God of acceptance, the God of love, right? So the God of wrath camp says, we are bad, we're sinful, and God is really mad about it. And you better get yourself together. You better fix it. You better pull yourself up by your bootstraps and try harder to try to make yourself right, because God is really angry with how bad you are. Then the other side says, yeah, we're really bad, but God's going to get over it, right? He's just going to accept us as we are, because that's what love does. Love just accepts me the way I am. And so I'm just going to keep living the way I'm living, and I'm so thankful that God loves me anyway. Okay, both of these forms of religion are entirely selfish. Because this side over here says, the God of the religion of wrath says, you know what? God is mad and I'm bad, and so I'm going to work harder. I'm focused on me and all my works. The religion of acceptance is selfish because it says, you know what? I'm bad, but I kind of like being bad. And God loves me anyway, and so I'm just going to keep doing what I want to do. But here's the truth of Christmas, and here's the truth of the righteous king. He comes in, and he says what we all know to be true. Come on, you know this is true. I am bad. I am broken. Now, I'm probably not as bad as that other person over there, but I'm not perfect. But I know that I'm not perfect. And I know that God's probably not happy about all the bad things I do. I know that. But here's the thing. No matter how hard I try, I can't be good enough. I can't. It's exhausting to try. And religion will say, just keep trying harder. Try harder to be good. Try harder to be good. So finally we say, you know what? I don't want to be a part of that kind of religion. I want to be a part of that kind of religion. But the problem over here is I continue to be bad, and I know that God is love, and God's just going to overlook it, but something still doesn't feel right to me. That doesn't feel just. That doesn't feel right. So what does God do? God in Jesus steps into broken religion and a broken world, and he says, yes, you are bad, and yes, the world is broken, but no, you cannot fix it yourself. And no, you will never be good enough. But I, the righteous king, will demonstrate my love for you in this, that even while you are broken and even while you are sinning, I will die for you. That I will pay the penalty for the sin and the brokenness so that you can have peace with God. And here's the thing. You don't have to try to be good enough, because you never will be. But when you come to know this righteous king, you will live your life in such a way that you strive to please him and honor him. This Christmas, my invitation for you is not just to adore Jesus, but to live your life in allegiance to the righteous king and to the love that he has for you, to the love that he has demonstrated for you on the cross. Not because your good behavior is going to get you into heaven, because good people don't go to heaven. Forgiven people do. And God has offered you mercy and forgiveness through this righteous king who himself has come to set all things right. And I know, right now in your life, the pain and the brokenness, the suffering that you're going through is real. The violence in the world is real. And there continues every day. You look on the news, there's more evidence of the brokenness of our world. And you think, where is God in the middle of this? He's here. He's with us. Jesus has come to make all things new. And this work that he is doing in your life as he's trying to forge you into the image of Jesus, he is doing throughout his church, and he wants to do in the world. And so, yes, we endure the suffering, but we do it with hope because the king is coming. We do it as people of peace because we know that he is ultimately the source of our peace. We do it with joy, not because our circumstances are joyful, but because we know who wins in the end. Most of all, we do it with the confidence of the love of God that was shown to us through this righteous king, through this root that became a shoot, that became a tree upon which he would die, and a grave from which he would rise, to lift us to the hope of heaven. That's what Christmas is about. And my prayer for you is that you will find the love of God in Jesus this Christmas.